Okay, we'll just wait a couple minutes for more people to show up here. Here we are. Just get my PowerPoint ready to go here. And we're good to go. All right, just open this up for everyone here. Okay, so we'll just wait a couple minutes and then we'll get started. Hopefully we have more than 2 today. And I will open up the PowerPoint. Okay. Almost done. So let's start. I think group 3 you'll get a cover momentarily. Okay. So for today, just a couple of reminders. You just would have received at 12 o'clock a reminder that your quiz opens at 12. So it opened today. It does close Wednesday at 12. That way I have some time to mark it so you can check your answers. Don't forget that you have your module final. I'm opening that on Friday. It'll be closing on June 2nd. So look at all these people joining us. Nice. 6 people, 7 people. Nice. Okay, so as I was saying, your quiz opened up today, it closes on Wednesday, and then you have your module final for musculoskeletal system, and that is on Friday. Opens Friday, closes June 2nd, which is the following Tuesday, so it does give you a wide window to pick a time at. And your research project is due Wednesday. So because of all this stuff that's due, your quiz today that opened, your research assignment, and then your unit test, we are not going to have a lecture on Wednesday. Okay, so there will be no lecture. I will keep Zoom open in case you want to touch base with me and ask questions, but I'm not giving a lecture on Wednesday. On Friday, we start sports medicine. Okay, so sports medicine starts Friday. So you'll need your sports medicine booklets. So if you haven't got those, you need to let me know. I did send out a Google form about that. You would have got that when you picked up your material from the lockers. If you had not picked up your locker material, you need to call the school and arrange a time to pick that up. So we will be starting that on Friday. Okay, and that is that. Okay, so we are going to do our last PowerPoint for musculoskeletal system, and that's all about maintaining a healthy musculoskeletal system and what happens when we age. So that's kind of like what we did for cardiovascular system. So I'm just going to share the PowerPoint with you. And this is on Google Classroom as well, of course. All right, there we are. And so there we go. Okay. So the more muscle that's burning calories as it's moving. So if we have more muscle, it's easier to maintain body weight. As well, we can maintain body weight. And it gives us more energy, right? Muscles are actively working for us. We have energy to do things. Okay, so those are some of the things that make it so it's the rest of our age. Okay, so when we age, our calcium and protein. So here's the problem. So we know that bones store calcium, right? So the remodel process is calcium comes off bone and then back on bone and comes off bone. So we have this coming off and coming on calcium. It uses like calcium in our bones, and protein in bone is also important. Protein helps to make up what's called collagen, and collagen leads to flexibility. Cells don't really feel like flexible, but they do a little bit of intake. We lose collagen, they become more brittle, and then we're prone to fractures in our bone. Okay, so we become more prone to fracture. So when we think of this, right? When you hear about elderly people falling, it's very common when they fall, they might break a hip, fall on their hip, for example. So they break up. Part of the reason older people tend to fall more because they don't have good balance as younger people. The other thing, we look at toddlers. So toddler is a kid just learning how to walk. Okay, like toddlers fall all the time because they're learning to walk. But when they fall, they pop it back up. An older person, when they fall because the bones are more brittle, it's quite likely that they will do damage, either bruising the bone or fracturing the bone. Okay. Also, what happens when we get older is we end up with more osteoclasts than osteoblasts. So osteoblast is bone building blast. So osteoclasts, we're breaking down the bone, so we're getting more of those, and fewer of those are building it back up. So our bones become more and more brittle as time goes on. All right, so we have a little video I'm just going to watch on that. So I'll just open up. Here, find it. Oh, whoops, let's try this again. Where is my? I had all these opens prepared. I don't know where I want them to be. Okay, well, we will just. I'll just link. So we can lose 1.2 centimeters, so about half an inch every 20 years from the 30 years, we lose less, but we do lose height as we age. And we noticed this in my father, who's always been about 5.5-ish, and we measured everyone's height a couple of years ago, and my dad is about 5'10", and he's around 70. So we do lose this height over time as a result of what's going on with our intervertebral disc. Other things that happen, so as I talked about when we were talking about bones and our skeleton, is that over time, more and more cartilage ossifies into bone. So when we look over here, our rib cartilage calcifies. So remember, there's cartilage between our sternum and our ribs, right? And that cartilage starts to ossify. And as it ossifies, our ribs start losing their flexibility because it's more compact. So we can actually lose the diameter of our chest. But what the problem with that is this flexibility in this cartilage, our rib cage comes up and down every time we breathe. And if we lose some flexibility, breathing can become more labored. It takes more energy for us to breathe. Okay. All right. So this image here just has us looking at what happens with our mass of bone in men and women. Okay. So the maximum mass, according to this graph, is about 35. In the video, it was about around 30. Okay. But when we look, we have our maximum mass, and then that mass in bone starts to decrease. Now we see we have a bigger dip in women because part of maintaining that bone mass, when we lose our hormones, our active hormones of estrogen and progesterone, when women hit menopause, that ability to hang on to that mass of bone starts taking a really big decline. So that's why more women usually suffer from osteoporosis than men. And what women can do about that is usually when you're in your teen years to maintain a high level of calcium in your diet. You don't want to do that late. When you're 50, yeah, it's important, but usually the damage has been done. You want to really start that at a younger age, is finding high nutritional sources for calcium. All right, this other image. So this exemplifies what happens to our height over time. So we look here, we see someone who's 30, right? So maximum bone density. And then what we see happening here is this individual is lost between those discs. They've lost some of the spacing. The intervertebral discs are starting to shrink, so their height is lower. Now, what also happens as our muscles, and so as that density starts to decrease in the intervertebral discs, or we're losing water rather, so our height starts to shrink, but we also lose our ability to have posture. Those muscles weaken. And what can happen is we end up with a little hump. So it's referred to as a dowager's hump. And we'll see that that's starting here at 50, and then at 70 it becomes a little more pronounced. Not every person has this, but every once in a while you'll see an elderly person that seems to be stooped, and that stooped look is what this is indicating here in the image. Okay. All right, changes in muscle. So as we age, we lose muscle tissue. So that happens in and around 40 years of age. Now, part of that loss is due to lack of activity. As we get older, we tend to slow down and not be as active, so we can lose muscle tissue as a result of that. Muscle fibers can lose diameter. So our muscles have these parallel strips of fibers, and they can start losing diameter, and then they don't have as much contractibility, so they're not pulling as tight, so losing the strength then. And then over time, our muscle tissue can start to be replaced with fat and connective tissue. So we lose muscle that way. So what we might see happening is, so someone your guys' age can go to the gym, work out, and you can gain muscle mass fairly quickly. Now we look at your parents and your grandparents, right? They have to work very hard just to maintain what they have, let alone to try to build new muscle tissue. Okay. All right, so we're just going to watch a little video, and this should be now set up for me here. So let's try that. Okay. All right, so this video is about something called sarcopenia. Sarcopenia is just a term for losing muscle mass. So this talks about it as a disease, but this is something that happens as we age as well. Okay.
Sarcopenia. What is sarcopenia? Sarcopenia is a disease associated with aging process, the loss of skeletal muscle mass and strength, which in turn affects balance, gait and overall ability to perform tasks of daily activities, such as climbing stairs, lifting objects and walking. Causes: aging, decline in hormone levels, reduction in muscle fibers, decrease in protein production in the body. Risk factors: sedentary lifestyle, poor symptoms,
There we go. It does give you a little sense of what happens to us as we lose muscle mass and what's going on. Okay. All right, so we'll close that off there and go back to our PowerPoint. Okay. All right, when we age, our joints also change. So loss of collagen, so remember collagen is that protein that allows for us to have some elasticity, right? Loss of collagen in our ligaments and skin. Remember, our ligaments are what hold our bones together. So if we have less elasticity, then our bone just sort of kind of creak rather than doing what it's supposed to do, is move. So we lose some range of motion. We have loss of collagen in our skin as well. So our skin starts to lose its elasticity as we age. Again, so less able to move because our skin's less elastic. Think about this. When you touch your skin, right? Your skin just bounces right back. Okay, mine would be a little slower. And then if you compare that to your grandparents, that indent's going to stay even longer because of that losing or loss of elasticity. Okay, so what happens is your joints become more stiff, so a little harder to move. It requires more energy to move and sometimes more pain to move. Of course, if it becomes more painful to move, then you don't exercise as much. They still become more stiff, and it's a cycle that continues. Okay, so as we get older, we have a reduced range of motion as a result of this. The other thing happens in our joints is as we age, we start to lose synovial fluid. So remember, that's the fluid that's in the joint cavity of our synovial joints, and it's like a lubricant, right, between our bones. So we lose that, so there's more chance for our bone to rub together. Okay, so we'll just take a look at this one. And
face it, our joints are under a lot of pressure, in particular the knees and hips, which shoulder most of our weight.
The most common joints in the body to get arthritic that require treatment, significant treatment, are the hip joints and the knee joints. And it's because we walk on them and stand on them all the day.
By the numbers, knee replacements outpace hip replacements about 3 to 1, with shoulders coming in third. The fueling force is osteoarthritis, the most common form of arthritis. It breaks down the cartilage that buffers our joints.
It's a very common process that occurs primarily in our population between 65 and 85. But as our baby boomer population gets older, we're seeing a lot of younger patients in their 40s and 50s that are getting very arthritic.
The wear and tear that comes with age affects some more than others. Adding factors like excess weight, overuse of joints, and injuries make osteoarthritis more likely. There's also another component people often overlook: heredity.
I think the main reason people get arthritic joints, whether it be a hip or a knee, is primarily genetics for most people. It's the combination of your parents' genes that made you that will tell you how long your cartilage will last. And some people, cartilage will last for their whole life, and some people, the cartilage begins breaking down in their 30s and 40s.
Your family history is something you can't alter, but you can manage the other factors. Staying active and maintaining a healthy weight may help you hang on to your joints. For Lee Memorial Health System, I'm Amy Osher.
all right, so that talks about a condition called osteoarthritis, but it's not necessarily that. So osteoarthritis, the breaking down of cartilage, that happens as we age. So as we age, we can end up with less cartilage. And the more overweight we are, the more damage that can cause as our joints are pushing pressure on each other, and we can lose that cartilage faster, okay? And as we lose that cartilage, then it becomes more and more painful to move our joints. And as it becomes more painful, we want to be less active. And if we're less active, we can gain more weight. And again, you can see how this cycle happens. So the best thing for us to do is try to maintain a healthy body weight. All right, so as we age, so when we take a look at this diagram here, if we look at the muscle, so loss of muscular mass, flexibility, and strength, right? So we lose the mass of our muscle. Muscle loses its flexibility, okay, and it loses its strength. Cartilage, so cartilage, we lose cartilage. We also lose synovial fluid. Our ligaments and tendons become stiffer because of that loss of collagen. So we lose our range of motion around our joints. Our bones, we lose the density and strength of our bones, right? So less collagen, they become less flexible, so more brittle. We lose calcium in our bones, and we have more osteoclasts than osteoblasts. So bones aren't being, that stuff that's being removed from the bone isn't being replaced. And then this one here talks about the brain. We don't really get into the brain a lot in this unit, but in order for our muscles, our skeletal muscles to move, our brain has to send a message through our spinal cord, through nerves that send out messages through nerves to cause us to move. If our brain isn't sending those messages very much, then our muscles aren't getting that message to move. And if our muscles don't move, they start to atrophy or break down, right? That's that whole use it or lose it. Okay. So next, we talk about lifestyle choices. So how do we maintain a healthy musculoskeletal system? So part of that is maintaining a healthy diet. Now, some of the dietary choices or highlights when we talk about musculoskeletal system, one of them is calcium and phosphorus, because we know that that's what gets stored in our bones. So if we have a lack of that, it's going to go into our blood from our bone, and our bone will be deficient. So we want to maintain this. So if we look at this image on the right, here we see different sources of calcium. So we see lots of dairy sources, right? If you are a vegetarian, then you wouldn't choose this source, but canned salmon and sardines, the one that have the bones, those are fairly high in calcium. If you're a vegan, then you wouldn't go with the dairy options, but there are some plant-based options that have calcium in them, like almonds, green leafy vegetables. These guys belong to the same sort of ancestral family, the kale and the broccoli, soy and rice beverages, okay? Phosphorus, we see a lot of overlap. So we've got some cheese and milk, some of the fish here. And then we see some potatoes, and we see some meat if you're a meat eater, peas, kiwi. So you're looking for sources that can do this, that it increases the strength and rigidity of the bones, right? This is we need to store this stuff in our bones. Now the other thing we have is vitamin D. Now vitamin D is important to us because it helps our body to absorb calcium. So we want to make sure we have lots of calcium in our diet, but if we're lacking in vitamin D, our body's not going to absorb it. So we see some food sources for vitamin D. So we have some white fish and some salmon, some peas and some mushrooms, and et cetera, et cetera. But you guys should all know this. What is one thing that we can do to increase our body's ability to make vitamin D? What can we do to increase our body's ability to make vitamin D? Got 8 of you out there. Come on. Someone's got to know this. Yes, we can go outside, expose ourselves to sunlight. Okay, that sunlight absorbs through our skin and it helps our body to create vitamin D. Now, over the last 20 years, there's been different recommendations as far as whether we should supplement our diet with vitamin D or not. So those recommendations vary. So you'd need to talk to your own doctor about whether you need to supplement or not. Vitamin D is in milk. Milk is fortified with vitamin D as well. The problem where we live is it's dark for some of the year, right? And being dark for some of the year means that we have less opportunity to absorb vitamin D. When you go to school and it's dark and you come home and it's dark, we have less exposure to sunlight, okay? So whether or not we have to supplement that with a nutritional supplement or a dietary, eating is something in your diet to maintain that. So that's just something you have to talk to your doctor about. Okay, the other thing, protein. Protein is very important to us as well. Protein increases bone tissue flexibility, and it also helps us to build muscle. So protein's needed for that as well. So we want a diet that has protein in it. So whether you're choosing to eat animal protein or plant protein, you need protein. So if you've chosen not to eat animal protein, there are lots of alternatives for plant protein. So nuts is one of your alternatives. They are high in fat, so you don't want to, eat buckets and buckets of nuts. Beans, kidney beans, white kidney beans, red kidney beans, black beans, chickpeas, lentils, lima beans. All of those are excellent sources of protein. So you want to make sure you're maintaining that protein in your diet. Okay. So just a couple of things with nutrition. So this first one here talks about, just my pencil out here. So branched chain amino acid. Amino acids are building blocks for protein. So amino acids help with muscle recovery and increase muscle growth, right? So if we're working out, we can't build more muscle unless we have the building blocks for muscle, which means we have to have some protein floating around in our bodies, okay? Vitamin D and calcium. So remember calcium, vitamin D is needed to absorb calcium, maintain strong bones, and can help to prevent injuries, right? If we have a high density in our bone, then when we fall, it's not as brittle and less likely to fracture. Okay. All right, some other choices here. So lifestyle choices. What should we maybe eliminate or limit? So one thing is caffeine. So you may or may not have heard that caffeine decreases how much calcium's in your bone. It decreases it, but maybe not to the same degree that we think. Excessive caffeine. So if you're having 1 or 2 cups a day, probably isn't going to have any impact on the calcium in your bone. If you're up to the 5 to 10 range, And it may not be coffee you're drinking, it might be rock stars that have caffeine, or those refreshers from Starbucks, right? Those all have caffeine. So this can be offset by having 1 to 2 tablespoons of milk every time you have a caffeinated drink. So my mom, who drinks a lot of coffee, adds milk to her coffee. So that sort of offsets the whole impact of the caffeine. You might want to have a yogurt or something after you've had a refresher from Starbucks. And then that can limit the impact it has on your bone. All right, alcohol. Alcohol can have an impact as well. So excessive alcohol can decrease how much calcium's in your bone. So more calcium's coming off our bone and going into our blood. It also can work to kill osteoblasts. So remember, osteoblasts are the bone builders. So if we don't have enough bone builders, then we're going to lose bone. Okay, so if you look at this little chart at the side, heavy alcohol consumption can lead to osteoporotic fractures. So less dense bone, and then more prone to being fractured, right? Smoking. This picture here was painted by Vincent van Gogh, the same guy who cut off his ear. So he sort of knew something about smoking that the other people didn't know in the 1800s. But what smoking does is it limits your body's ability, your bone's ability to absorb calcium. So your bones will be less dense that way, but it also slows your body's production of osteoblasts. So once again, more bone is breaking down than is being built back up, okay? So that can cause our bones to become more brittle. Maintaining a healthy body weight reduces pressure on our joints. So anything we can do to maintain a healthy body weight is good for us because we're putting less pressure on our joints, less pain on our joints, less maybe necessity to have a joint replaced as we get older. Okay, other things we can do. So lifestyle choices, activities. So weight-bearing exercise. This one is really important because this weight-bearing means I'm doing something where I have to hold my weight up. So that can be where I'm walking or running. So swimming is a very good physical activity, but it's not a weight-bearing activity, okay? Weight-bearing activities maintain bone density. Then we have resistance exercises. So resistance exercises are anything where we're pulling or pushing against another force. So lifting weight, using bands, anything like that. And that increases our muscle strength. And then stretching. So stretching increases our joint flexibility. So we see this exercise here, maximum range of motion for our joints. So the more we do flexibility exercises, so stretching, the more movement we have or range of motion we have around our joints. So that's an important thing to do as well. All right. Reducing injury in sports. So what can we do here? So first we have wear the proper gear. So different sports have different types of gear. So I'm showing an image of a rugby player here. In order to play rugby, you have to wear a mouth guard. Now the mouth guard isn't just to protect cuts from your teeth or to protect your teeth. It's actually to help protect you from concussions as well. Because when you fall on your head, what happens is some of that shock gets absorbed by the mouth guard, and that helps to prevent a concussion. Different sports have different gear. So if you're playing football, you have quite a bit of gear. If you're playing hockey, you have quite a bit of gear. But all of that is to help protect injuries. All right, other things we can do. Make sure you have muscle strength. So a lot of sports involve dry land workouts where you're increasing the strength of your muscle, and stretching where you're increasing your flexibility. So these things will help you to prevent injury. You don't want to just go right into a sport without doing this and maintaining your muscle strength and your joint flexibility. Doing a proper warm-up. So as we know, we have more range of motion around our joints when they've warmed up. So a warm-up could be just a little short run, right? Anything to warm that up so we have more movement around our ligaments. So if we make a motion that may cause us to sprain our ankle, maybe those ligaments have a little bit more stretch when we're warmer, so then we have, we're less likely to injure ourselves that way. Okay, cross training. So we want to make sure that if your sport involves you doing a specific movement, so tennis, we're always moving our arm like this. Cross training would involve us doing other actions, right, to avoid these overuse injuries. Take time to rest. So you want to rest. So rest doesn't necessarily mean that you're not doing anything, but rest could mean that instead of this activity for 2 days, I'm going to do this completely different activity that involves these different joints and muscles, right? And lastly, do not play through pain, right? If you roll your ankle, don't just play through it because you're causing more damage, or your knee, or any of those types of joint injuries, right? You want to wait till it heals and then go back. So it's good to talk to a physiotherapist about that, of when is time to go back. Because even if it doesn't haunt you today, it may be an injury that ends up haunting you in your 30s or 40s, okay? All right, lifting techniques. So part of what's in the program of studies is we have to use proper lifting techniques. So we want to squat down and bend at our hips and our knees, right? We want to always keep our back straight. So we see this straight back, right? So like there's a pole right here. So we see like there's a pole. So there's bending here at the hips, but the back is staying straight. Maintain a good posture. Lift slowly by straightening your hips and knees, not with your back. Don't lift a heavy object above shoulder level, and then don't twist while you're lifting. A lift and twist can cause damage to your back as well. And this is something that's really important, because if you cause damage to your back in your teen years, that continues to haunt, I did, and that continues to haunt me, and I'm close to 50, and I have to take care that I don't push my back too hard, because I'll end up not being able to move very well for a few days. Okay, ergonomics. Ergonomics, the science of fitting a workplace to the user's needs to increase efficiency and productivity and reduce discomfort. All right, so often we hear ergonomics when we're talking about people who are working desk jobs. So we see the image of this person, right? We're setting up the desk to make sure that the elbows are in the right position, that the thigh to back angle is in the right position, where the feet are, having a document holder, okay? And I know for my husband's work, because in his work, what he does is a lot of sitting at a desk. His workplace talks a lot about proper ergonomics. So you're not ending up with back pain after sitting for a period of time, right? So it's to reduce that kind of discomfort and reduce potential long-term injuries. Like people who type a lot sometimes get carpal tunnel syndrome, where they have inflammation that starts pushing against one of your nerves and you get numbness, often in these two fingers here, okay? But ergonomics doesn't have to just be desk. So if we look here, ergonomics of wearing a backpack, right? So wearing a backpack properly, one strap on each shoulder and then properly fastened in the front, so it's carried properly by your whole back and your shoulders, as opposed to what I often do is one shoulder, which is not good for me, because then you're at an angle, right? Okay, so we're just going to watch a short video here on what ergonomics is all about.
When people hear ergonomics, they often think of this. But in truth, ergonomics is simply fitting the workplace to the worker, rather than the other way around. And that includes lots of workplaces: construction, manufacturing, transportation, healthcare. You get the idea. So today, we're going to cover some ergonomic basics that apply to virtually any workplace. These include proper posture, managing forces, and excessive repetitive motion. Ready? Let's start with posture. Sitting, standing, walking, it really doesn't matter. Proper bone and joint alignment is key. So straighten up that back, keeping ears, shoulders, and hips in a straight line. Good. Now squat by hinging at the hip. Keep everything aligned. Now sit. Perfect. Maintaining that posture through your day and work, any work, will reduce fatigue, eliminate strains, decrease stress on joints and ligaments, and have you feeling great. If posture is good, forces are evil. Why? Because they assault your posture constantly. There are lift and carry forces, grip forces, push and pull forces, and just plain old gravity. Hey, let's help you out with this. To avoid injury, don't lift, pull, or push too much. Let your posture guide you. And if need be, get help or use a hand truck or other tool. Also, move that body. If you stand up a lot for work, sit. If you've been sitting, stand up. Every change is an opportunity to realign and think about your posture. Our last Ergo 101 topic is repetitive motion. Doing the same task over and over and over and over and over and over. Well, you get the point. Repetitive motions from jobs like these can cause carpal tunnel syndrome, joint problems, poor circulation, and more. Fortunately, these injuries are easy to avoid. First, by arranging your work area to fit you and support good posture, and second, by stretching. Stretches like this, or this, or this, well, maybe not that. Every 30 to 60 minutes can make a world of difference and prevent injury. Show off. Let's recap. Ergonomics is all about fitting your work environment to you. So set up your station to support good posture. Be mindful of posture, reduce forces, and take breaks to stretch and realign yourself. Do all that, and you'll be on your way to being more efficient, more productive, and healthier. For tip sheets on setting up workstations and the ergonomics quiz, click the link on your screen.
All right. So when you think about good posture, I kind of think about you guys as students, right? So you're kind of stuck in a desk. And maybe that's something one day when we actually go back to school learning, is that we all should be standing up every little while, every once in a while after, because we're going through 85-minute classes, and stretching a little bit, right? Maintaining that posture instead of just sitting for a long period of time in desks that are supposed to be one size fits all, and yet you guys are all over the map, as are all humans, with what our sizes are. So not able to really find that perfect desk for us because there's so many students, right? Okay, let's go back to our PowerPoint here. Okay, so we just have a couple more things here. We'll go over probably by a couple minutes today. Sorry about that. Oh, whoops. That's not my share. Oh, here. Okay. So community resources for people that are living with musculoskeletal conditions. So doctors, right? Obviously in our community, they can diagnose and help us treat. A dietitian can do a couple of things. So if our diet has something to do with our musculoskeletal condition, they can help us to manage that. But they can also help us to maintain a healthy weight. And like we said, a healthy weight takes pressure off of our joints. Physiotherapists are used to help us with chronic injuries, but also or recent injuries, but also chronic. So chronic problem is something that's ongoing, that affects our muscles, our bones, or our joints. Fitness trainers can help you develop a fitness routine to manage your condition. Maybe you have an issue with one of your legs, they can help you develop a program that can maintain the health of that leg and keep maintaining the health of the rest of your body as well. Chiropractor, this is something that I've never been to. Sports medicine, provides treatment for sports injuries. All right, do the emotional impact injury. So some of these are similar to cardiovascular. So let's say you do physical activity, so you end up gaining weight because of that. Because you have the activity you love, maybe you have broken your leg and now you can't do train for the marathon you wanted to do, right? So not being able to do that activity can have a psychological effect. Families increase stress, and then not being able to do the same types of activities with their loved one. Economic impacts. Individuals living with musculoskeletal conditions may have reduced income because they can't do the same job or have to do modified work. Often you have to modify your home depending on the conditions. So if someone is now can't walk and needs to be in a wheelchair, they might have to, their whole home might have to be changed to be wheelchair accessible. including ramps, wider doorways, sometimes stability bars. So if you're less stable in your ability to walk, so stability bars are those kind of ones that are usually seated diagonal, where people can use them to get off the toilet or to get out of the shower. Okay. Families may suffer income loss because they're taking care of someone who's got a condition, or they may have to work more to make up for that condition. All right, that is it. That is our last section. So you could see questions like this on your module final on Friday. None of this stuff will be on your quiz today. So your quiz opened today at noon. Your conditions project is due on Wednesday. And remember, there is no class on Wednesday, and we are starting with the sports medicine and nutrition on Friday. Okay? Any questions? All right, guys, so that's it for today. So remember, next class is Friday. I will be here if you have any questions that need answering on Wednesday. Okay? All right. Yeah, Cora, you can stick around, absolutely. And the rest of you, we will see you guys on Friday. So good luck on getting all your work done. Just go like this.
Hi.
Hey, Cora, just give me 1 second.